There are many wonders in this world, ancient and modern. Buildings, landscapes, even some people are considered wonders in this day and age. And it's fair to say that some feats of engineering that went into the creation of railways could be considered wonders too. There was at one point a British locomotive that was also considered a wonder. However, it didn't quite live up to its title. In 1945, the LMS was starting to show more of an interest in diesel-powered locomotives, and with much of their steam fleet almost entirely worn out thanks to the Second World War, they felt it was an avenue worth pursuing. The railway already had a few diesels in service, mostly as shunting engines, and so it was only natural for them to want to try them on other types of work too. Their chief mechanical engineer, George Ivert, came up with some designs for mainline work as well as a design for secondary and branch lines. The mainline engines were built in 1947 and numbered 10,000 and 10,001. However, the formation of British Railways that same year led to the construction of the branch line design being delayed. By the time it was completed in 1950, both 10,000 and 10,001 had proved to be impressive and reliable, and so expectations were high for this new engine. Its design was heavily inspired by the appearance of American switcher diesels, with the cab being set in between a long bonnet and a short one. The long bonnet contained a Paxman 16-cylinder RPHXL Mark II 827 horsepower engine, British Thomas Houston electrical equipment, and the radiators required to cool them, while the short bonnet contained a Clarkson steam boiler for carriage heating, with ladders fitted on both sides to allow crews to refill the boiler's water tank. The unit had a four-wheeled bogie Bobo configuration with 3-foot 6-inch wheels powered by Thomas Houston traction motors. Measuring in at 41 foot 10.5 inches long, 12 foot 9 inches tall and weighing 69 tons, the locomotive was given the number 10,800 and put to work in Scotland. One of the benefits of the design was that it was intended to be what the Americans refer to as a road switcher, a locomotive capable of shunting carriages and wagons as well as pulling them on the main line. This was of great use on branch lines and secondary services as it meant only one engine would be needed to shunt, ready and pull a train, something that was awkward to do with the tender engines that usually ran the services. After a brief period in Scotland, it was sent down to London to pull suburban trains from Euston until 1952, when it was allocated to BR's southern region for use pulling trains between Brighton and South London. It was during its stint on the Southern that 10800 got its nickname of the Wonder Engine, but alas, wonderful it was not. Not long after it came into service, the Clarkson boiler was found to be problematic and was quickly swapped out for a Clayton one. Drivers also found that visibility was an issue when driving long bonnet forwards. This wasn't much of a problem on the American designs the engine was based on, as their cabs were raised to help see over the engine. But because of Britain's restrictive loading gauge, the roof of the cab was level with the roof of the bonnet. At first the issue wasn't too bad, as drivers were already used to the restricted view steam locomotives had, and they usually had a second man to help look ahead from the other side. But as the idea of crewing diesels with just one man became more popular, the lack of visibility became a bigger issue. Not helping matters was its poor performance. The diesel was intended to replace Ivert's Class II engines, but it was quickly found that it couldn't keep up with the work it was given. While it did have a top speed of 70 miles an hour, it rarely reached it, only just able to pull a train of 6 coaches, and even then it would struggle on hills. No matter where it was stationed, steam engines always seemed to outperform it on any duty it was given, though part of this might have been the railway's fault for putting it on duties Ivert never intended it to do. But most damningly of all was simply the fact it hardly ever seemed to work. Because of its lack of power, the Paxman engine was frequently adjusted and modified, leading to many cylinder head problems, with the cylinder heads being changed almost daily. Poor combustion in the engine also led to it spewing a lot of smoke when working, and much of the unburnt fuel would end up damaging components like the turbocharger, resulting in even more maintenance. The engine failed completely during a run in March 1954, and it took Brighton Works until December that same year to get it going again. All of these problems, combined with its lack of power, led to railwaymen giving it the nickname of the Wonder Engine, this being short for, "I wonder if it'll go today." Despite the poor performance, British Railways felt the engine had some promise, and in 1955 pursued the design further in the form of both the Class 15s and 16s that were completed in 1957 and 58 respectively. These engines turned out to be quite the disappointment, and considering they were meant to be refined versions of 10800, I think that tells you enough about the quality of the engine. It found itself between freight and passenger work as British Railways tried to find a use for it when it wasn't being mended, until finally in 1959 they just gave up and put it to one side. The Wonder Engine did at least get a chance to redeem itself when it was purchased by the Bush Traction Company in 1961 for use as an alternating current test bench. Its shoddy old Paxman engine was replaced with a Bristol Siddeley Maybach MD655 and an alternator and new control gear was fitted. It was given the name Hawk and testing began in 1964. Despite the overhaul, Hawk still proved to be unreliable, but this was due to the still developmental nature of its electrical equipment. Though Hawk never got its chance to soar, the tests did help Bush refine and develop the AC electrical equipment that resulted in the construction of HS4000, Kestrel, and many diesel-electric designs that came afterwards. With no signs of improved performance, the locomotive was put to one side in 1968, with the engine and alternator being taken out in 1972 for use as a standby generator for the Bush Falcon Works. The rest of the locomotive was used for parts over the next few years before eventually being cut up in 1976. Despite being an abject failure, there's something still quite charming about 10800. Yes, it was underpowered and always breaking down, but for better or worse, it did serve as a lesson to British Rail what to do and what not to do, as well as act as a key stepping stone in the development of AC traction, which has become a cornerstone of locomotive design ever since. While it might not get the same fame or credit as its cousins 10000 or 10001, it still goes to show that we don't always have to succeed to be a wonder. Sometimes being the one to get the ball rolling can be a wonderful thing on its own. Subscribe for more.